All right, folks, we're opening some oysters, and if you're intimidated or you think you're intimidated by learning how to open oysters, or you think you might be interested in learning how, definitely you should definitely do it, because once you learn the simple technique, right? I have a few tools here. We have two different types of oyster knives. We have a spoon, we have a fork, a butter knife, and we have a sharper knife, and we're gonna open them with every single tool to show you that you don't, that even with the simplest of tools, or you don't even need an oyster knife per se to get started. But I think there are a few things you want to keep in mind. Safety is always first, right? If you put a knife to your hand, that's gonna be a bad day, right? You end up in the hospital. So you always want to stay safe so that you can have a good time opening them. So I think rule one is wear gloves. That's where you want to start, right? Wash your hands, throw a pair of gardening gloves on, or you could use, right, a lot of people use a towel, right, a rag of some sort. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Let's talk about purchasing, right? Because you're gonna have to get them from somewhere. If you're in Newport, Rhode Island, where we're shooting this, right, Middletown, Rhode Island, Benjamin's has right, I bought these from Benjamin's Raw Bar, and on Tuesdays it's all day happy hour, which means it's $1.50 for an oyster, and that's a pretty good deal if you think about, right? If you could go, right, every day it's happy hour 12 to 2, so you could get oysters for $1.50, or all day on Tuesday. And right, because anywhere else, I don't think you'll get it for as cheap. So it's a great deal. It's a great deal for fresh oysters. So let's say you're planning a party, or you're planning just to have some people over. Right? What am I thinking about? Let's say you buy 24 oysters, you might have one or two. Maybe they're the insides. You open them up and they're not what you, right? They're out of a whole batch. You might have a few that maybe you break the shell, or for whatever reason, they're just not ideal. So if I'm thinking you want to get a few extra. You want an optimal surplus, so that just in case you make a mistake, or it's just not nice. So maybe you get a few more. Let's say you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's say there's 6 people, 6 people here, and I'm planning on, and maybe each person will do 3 oysters, right? So 3 times 6, 18. So if I want 3 people, 3 oysters per person, then instead of 18, I'd get 24, 25, a few extra. Okay. Next thing is how do you keep them, right? So you throw them in your fridge. They could be good for a couple of days. Just keep them refrigerated so that they stay cold and fresh. Okay, so refrigeration, purchasing, gloves. So right, it said gardening gloves, stay safe. And then now let's go right into opening them. I think you could find a lot of videos online, right? Let's see these tools. There's a lot of videos online that will show you how to open them. Most videos you'll see, you're gonna see the person put the oyster. They're gonna put the oyster on the table, and they're usually gonna come from the hinge, right? The hinge is kind of this point in the back, and you're gonna see people usually go like this, and they're gonna right, kind of get in the back and come from the back. But you have this problem, right? You get what's called chippers. It chips away at the top shell. So if you have this problem opening the oyster, then what you can do is you can come from the side, right? There's kind of a seam that you're aiming for, and at an angle, right? And right, I was shown by Shucka Steve from Benjamin's that if you choke up on the knife and you could just wiggle it with light pressure. Right, wiggle. Right, choke up on the knife so you don't cut yourself, and then it's a wiggle. It's a tough one. Let's see this. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Okay, that one doesn't like me right now. Let's try this one. So same thing. 3 o'clock, give or take. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Here we go, right? So you find the seam. It's a wiggle. Right? Wiggle. And then once you can kind of get into the, right, once it kind of opens up a little bit, you insert the knife, and then I'm pivoting towards myself, right? It's a pivot of the wrist towards myself, so I'm going like this, right? A lot of people, they try and carve, they carve down instead of a pivot of the wrist, and then with the thumb still on the top of the shell, you're pushing the shell against the knife, and then with the knife you're lifting off the shell, right? And then from here you have a separate, right? So I've got a plate of ice, I've got a bowl of the oysters, and then I have a kind of a trash bowl where I can either compost this or do whatever with it. So then, and this should be to the right, should be to the right of my plate. So then from here you have it, and then it's, a lot of people, you see them scrape away at the oyster. You want to just do it in one stroke, right? One stroke. So let's do that one more time. So we're gonna find, right, so we're here. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, 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 3 o'clock. Right, hide choke. I should have gloves on or a towel. I'm wiggling, and I'm coming down at an angle, right? You're not going parallel. You're not going parallel into it because it's going to be hard to find that seam. You want to come down at a little bit of an angle, light pressure. If your knife is doing a decent job, right? If your knife is even a little sharp, you should find that seam fairly easy. Light pressure, wiggle, insert, pivot, lift off, one stroke. Okay, now let's try with some other tools and see how we fare. We're gonna try with a different style knife. This is oyster knife, Dexter. So, right, the high choke, you really want to get into the habit of choking up very high, because this is gonna prevent you from injuring yourself. So there's 3 strategies for preventing yourself from injuring yourself. Gloves, high choke, and a rag. Yeah, gloves, a rag, and then a high choke is basically everything you need to not cut yourself. So high choke. So now we're gonna try and go from the hinge, right? So let's do it on the table and mix it up on the table, right? So on the table, then you could go hinge, you could go curve in, or you could go curve out, right? There's just different strategies to do it. So let's go curve down on the table. You're just lifting, you're kind of finding some leverage and lifting up, right? So I'm lifting up. Boom, chipper, right? Chipper. Let's see if we can just keep on drilling and have it pop up from the hinge. There, right? You see that? We lift up. We've got it open. And then, again, pivot the wrist. Then you're going to cut the tendon that's holding on to the oyster. So pivot down, cut that tendon, and then it's a lift off, right? Lift off. Then we turn the oyster in our hand, and then one stroke, right? One stroke. Just push the oyster out of the way, and then if you've done your job properly, then the oyster should be able to slide out of the cup without that much effort, right? So you don't have it dangling on your face or spilling all over. So if this one can fall out, then it's been done effectively. Okay, so now let's try some. Let's say you don't have an oyster knife, but you have oysters for some reason. What can you do if you don't have the ideal knife? Let's try let's go butter knife, right? Because most people have a butter knife. Okay, so let's go butter knife, and then we'll go from the hinge. So butter knife, high choke, chipper, right? Chipper, that's okay. We're gonna keep on drilling, see if we can get it from the back. Chipper. It's actually quite difficult with the butter knife, but let's see if we can get it done. Okay, see, this is where it can actually get dangerous because I'm having a hard time keeping a grip on the knife, which makes me want to grab up higher on the handle. But if you grab up higher on the handle, then you run the risk of slipping, and you could put this, I mean, with enough force, you could put this butter knife right through your hand, which will be a bad day. So what should we do? Well, we're gonna do it, but you want to be aware of how it could kind of turn into a bad day. So right now, with very light pressure, I'm gonna try and go in at 3 o'clock. So I'm wiggling, and keep in mind, this could get very dangerous, right? Because if I lose the grip, if I lose my grip and this pops up, I'll put this thing right through my hand. All right, so I'm using a lot of pressure right now, and it's quite difficult. So now let's go back to the hinge. Right, high choke mitigates the chances that it hedges against you hurting yourself. What can we do? Well, let's get it until we get it open. Oh, here, let's try another technique. So if you have this, you have the knife pinned against the hinge, and it's giving you difficulty, like it's giving me. And I've been doing this for 7 years, and this is still giving me problems. What you can do is hold it in your hand and lightly tap. We're gonna tap. I want to break this table. Man, this freaking these Rams Island from Mystic are giving me quite a lot of trouble. Let's try this one. Maybe less trouble. Okay, high choke. Oh, easier. Look, right in there. High choke. 3 o'clock. Look, slid right in. Much easier on a different try, right? So we're in, and then look, pivot the wrist, lift off, right? Just like that. And then it's turn the oyster towards yourself, and then one stroke. Just push it out of the way. Right? A lot of people, they scrape away. Get into the habit. One stroke. Okay, so now let's see if we could do the hinge with a butter knife, right? So we struggled with that last one. Let's try a different one, see if it's easier. Okay, we're here. Right? I'm at the hinge, and then I'm just using it like a lever, or a bottle top, popping the right chipper. That's okay. Let's try again. Chipper. Okay, so right chippers, so now working on the hinge. Let's try let's go 3 o'clock. Look, with a butter knife. Seam. Find the seam, just a little light pressure, wiggle. Wiggle, insert, pivot toward yourself, lift off. One stroke. Okay, that's butter knife. Now let's try the spoon, because that's gonna be tough. Okay, spoon, high choke on the spoon, right? Get into that habit, high choke, or to try to go through the hinge, and hopefully we won't get a chipper, which will really make it tough to use a spoon. So I'm ready to have it. You're using a spoon as a lever from the hinge. Okay, chipper, that's okay. Let's see if we can go do the hinge again. So you're kind of opening the top of the oyster shell like a bottle top. Ah, man, that's tough. Okay, let's try 3 o'clock technique. Oh, I think I can do it. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. It's a bit tough, but I think it's possible. Right, so you're just kind of drilling in at that 3 o'clock area. Oh man, that's tough. Oh, Jesus. And I'm actually going to use the hilt to get in there. Hilt in, off, and then, so, 1 stroke, right? 1 stroke. Okay, that was tough. Spoon's tough. Not the ideal option. Let's try fork. So what I'm trying to do is get that one of the prongs into the 3 o'clock side, right? High choke on the fork. High choke on the fork. Give me resistance. I'll try the seam or the hinge. Light pressure. Okay, so now it's bending the fork. So you might want to use tools that, you know, can take some wear and tear. Man, that's tough. Okay, let's try 3 o'clock technique. Okay. Dang, that's tough. Chipper. Try a different one. So high choke, 3 o'clock. Ooh, look at that. 3 o'clock. We're in. Then it's right, insert, pivot towards yourself. Right, insert, pivot towards yourself. Right, when I say pivot towards yourself, pivot your wrist instead of carving down. You want to pivot the wrist, thumb presses down on whatever tool you're using, lift off. 1 stroke. Okay, so now we're going to use probably the most dangerous tool, and this is a very sharp, maybe you could call this a paring knife, right? So we want to be, I would not recommend doing this actually, because I mean, you definitely, even gardening gloves and a knife this sharp, this will go right through a gardening glove. So you really want to, if you only have, let's say for whatever reason, you only have access to a very sharp knife like this, you want to choke up very high, right? Because if you choke up high, then you won't cut yourself as badly if you slip. So I'm here, high choke, 3 o'clock, or let's do it. Let's go like this. And you could cut yourself holding it as well, so you really want to be very careful as you're doing this. Yeah, this is dangerous, man. So I'm gonna high choke, 3 o'clock, wiggle. Wiggle, insert, pivot down, right? Pivot down, lift off, 1 stroke. Okay, so we went through the whole range of tools. So, right, key points, takeaways. The questions are, can I have a towel or some gardening gloves, leather gloves, gloves of any kind, even some protective plastic gloves? Then it's high choke. And then, right, 2 techniques on the table, lift up through the hinge, or you could go 3 o'clock. Right, when I say 3 o'clock, as in, if the hinge is 12 north, 3 o'clock is, it would be, if the hinge is north, then it's, right, it's 3 o'clock, between 3 and 4 o'clock, that's where you're aiming for, on the seam of the oyster, where the cup and the top meet. So, if this is the oyster, when I say 3 o'clock, it'd be in this section, the hinge, that's, or hinge here, that I'm aiming for. But so those are the 2 places where I personally enter. Here, the hinge, or the seam at an angle, right? High choke, 3 o'clock, wiggle, 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 wiggle. Right, you see that? It just, you kind of, you lift up where there's separation, insert, pivot towards yourself, lift off, 1 stroke. So hopefully this helps, and reach out with any questions. All right.